Welcome, sweet humans, back to another episode here on the Elements of Evolution YouTube channel and podcast. Today, I have another guest with me for an alignment talk, an incredible young woman who I met in Maui on the Sanctuary of She retreat. Lacie was a wild card, and I'm so excited to have you here, Lacie. Welcome.
Welcome, welcome. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here with you.
And I want to offer you a proper introduction, especially for those that are new to your world. So, anyone listening, Lacie is an energetics coach, ritualist, and multidimensional guide devoted to joy, pleasure, and the sacred intelligence of the human experience. She supports entrepreneurs, healers, and heart-led humans in thriving within their activated essence and building lives and businesses rooted in authenticity. Her work weaves embodiment, subconscious reprogramming, tantric philosophy, universal law, and psychosynthesis into a practical path of transformation. At the heart of her mission is a simple truth. Everything you seek already exists within your energetic body. Lacie's coaching offers a fusion of ancient wisdom and modern practice, helping others repattern their reality, awaken their inner leadership, and realize their limitless potential. Welcome, Lacie.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for reading that.
Absolutely. It's such a pleasure to have you here. It was so wonderful to come across you at the retreat and just witness your unraveling. And I just have to say, um, I couldn't help but reflect on my early 20s upon meeting you because your physical vessel truly has not been on this planet for that long. And yet, you are someone who is so connected to mission and purpose already. And I would actually love to start our interview here, where there is this curiosity in me that would love to hear a bit about why that is so true. Why is mission so important to you at such a young age? And how did you get to be this version of self? So I know that's a loaded question space, but feel free to take it away.
Yeah, for sure. It's a beautiful question. Wow. I think for sure I'd say I owe it to my parents and all the incredible people that I've came across so far in my journey. I think really even from my youngest and earliest memories, my connection it was always rooted in helping the other person really understand themselves and their worth to the highest potential. And as I've continued to understand myself deeper and deeper, I've always had you could say like I was a diva or loved beauty and very girly at a young age, but beyond that it is a celebration of being a woman and the opportunities I feel that we have in our human experience to celebrate things that represent us or the way that we feel about ourselves. And I think that from such a young age, I was always witnessing that in myself and always seeking to understand others deeper in that way as well. Because I think even from, you know, like I said, my earliest memories, that always felt so good to me. And I always witnessed a lot of women or people in my life that weren't as easily gratified by the mundane. And I think that it felt as almost like a duty or a rite of passage to invite people into that play space or be able to witness the world in that way. And I think as I continued to recognize myself as someone that invites people into that space, I continued to attract more opportunities, both good and bad, that amplified that. So I think it continued to also get very broad, and I was able to fuse in so many different things that I would study. But I remember at a very young age, I had a karma poster in my bedroom that hung over my bed where the snake was in an infinity and it was actually eating its tail. And I remember that I would tell my best friend at the time, she's still my best friend, that karma comes to us, but always in a camouflaged message. And I think that I was always seeing things in that way. And I was seeing it with people, and I wanted to illuminate a truth with others so I feel that we could meet each other on the same level, if that makes sense. And yeah, I just wanted to illuminate things that felt like we were able to connect and hear each other better at and in every level. So I think that that's kind of it is a loaded question, but it's a broad answer. But I feel like yeah, that was what was kind of happening for me in so many different ways through sports and through fashion or through relationships, especially too when I was super young, always wanting my girlfriends to understand their worth in relationships,
Mm.
doing anything to stick by their side, and same with people in my family as well.
So, what I'm hearing, Lacey, is that from a really young age, there was almost this innate connection to collective consciousness or this understanding that we're really not separate from the
Hmm.
other. I'm curious if looking back retrospectively, you understand your childhood as different or not of the norm, because many people have the experience of coming earthside not connected to that knowing, or if we are connected, it is quickly, let's say, dissolved from our upbringing. So it
Yeah.
sounds to me like you never lost that connection.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for pointing that out. I think as I continue to get a little bit older and study, I continue to realize that we don't know what we don't know. And everything is just a fraction or a piece of the truth. And even when I go out and I'm looking at all these different vantage points, I continue to see the same truth underneath. I think having discernment and understanding how everything in the world is so flavorful and it's easy to get extremely indulgent in a lot of areas, but they all represent the same truth at a vibrational level. And I think that like you said, from a young age, I was I don't want to, label myself as highly sensitive, but highly alert and with my senses. And as I've continued to get older and study things like yoga or tantra, and quantum mechanics, I realized that we all, have those psychic abilities, and it's just about using our own we are the remover of our obstacles, and when we move those emotions or the mundane or the distractions out of the way, things become amplified. And for me, I've always been very connected to my clairaudience, being able to hear things about other people or playing back in reflection, hearing things that they say to me, as a reflection of their power and our power together. And so I would always get, when I feel connected to someone, I can tell right away. As you remember in Maui, like 5 minutes in, getting close to you, telling you, like, I like you, just the small things that amplify this very gentle connection that is actually so beautiful. And it deserves to be celebrated. And I think if the world saw how easy it is to truly lean into the magnetism of yourself and other people and how we can just play and have fun in that, it's a really great thing. And I think that if we were all able to remove the things that we fear, um, the world really would be a better place in the way we can connect to other people and most importantly, the way we can connect to ourselves, which would ultimately help the relationships we have with others.
We control ourselves and nothing else. I have a question here, but before we dive into this next question, I want to reflect to you your Pisces rising, this ascendant sign, and it is often called our soul sign. It also rules the first house of self and body for you. And
Mm.
Pisces is the final sign of the zodiac, and it is the ending and the beginning. It actually contains all of the archetypes in one.
Mm.
Is the etheric. It is the connected. It is the part of our psyche that understands we come from unity consciousness. And even though we're dressed for a little while in these human suits, we actually remain unity consciousness. And
Wow.
because of that connection, Pisces is ultimate compassion, love, universal love. And hearing you come in and maintaining that connection, even in this physical vessel, it speaks right into this first house of self, of body being ruled by Pisces. And then you also have Uranus at 4 degrees, which is actually only 2 degrees away from your ascendant. And
Mm.
Uranus is higher mind, it is higher consciousness. Is this resonate?
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have chills. Thank you so much for being able to channel the wisdom of the stars and the planets for me. That absolutely does resonate. Yeah.
So it's almost
Thank you.
this like your and when you say hearing that, like when you speak of your senses, your
Hmm.
higher mind is actually communicating to you like using your sensing body. So whether
Yeah.
it's you get a vision or you're hearing, and
Hmm.
so many people, just to add a little side tangent here, I grew up with a mom who was literally a paid medium. People would come
Mm.
and speak to her, and she would offer messages from loved ones. So I grew up believing there's no way that I am an empath or that I have any sort of
Mm.
ability like that. And then I remember in my 20s listening to Empath Survival Guide by Judith Orloff. And I realized, okay, actually, every single human being on the face of the planet is in some way psychic or sensitive, or they
Yes.
have these abilities. And mine was covert. It was a knowing. I didn't see, I didn't
Yeah.
hear. It was just clear
Hmm.
cognizance, a clear knowing.
Yep.
So it's really
Yeah.
cool to be witnessing you in this experience of quite literally your higher mind communicating via your sensing body. And it makes so much
Yeah.
sense looking at your chart.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, after I had met you and spoke with you, even briefly, I started to look into the planets and the stars and things like that. And after just compounding the elements with our emotions, with our senses, and realizing which emotion that we're facing is actually keeping us away. It's keeping us in our karma or with our path or in distraction of our most innate gifts. And when we can't move through those emotions, we silence our own psychic abilities. And luckily, we have the things that can't be taken away from us, like the planets or the stars or the elements of this earth. It's why those things are so deeply and so historically celebrated. And I think it's really beautiful because when I compound all of those things, the same things remain true. So, despite whether or not you are a big believer in this or that or this or that, when you really step back and look at it in that way, you're right. We all do carry those same gifts and the truth and the honor and the celebration of the interconnectedness with us and the elements and our emotions and our senses and the stars and the planets always remain universally true, even if they are through magic or they are through, certain calculations that might not be so logical or practical. There's such deep, beautiful truth inside of them that remain true over time. So I think it's an absolute invitation. And yeah, when I got into the planets and after Maui, I was like, whoa. Yeah.
Is I love that you bring that here because obviously I'm obsessed. I think that to me, the the chart, the natal chart can be looked at literally as your alignment guide. This is
Hmm.
yourself leaving you a cheat sheet as to like how do you want to live your life. But it's not that we're these disempowered beings that are following some trail laid out for us by, invisible forces. We actually get to harness the energy within our chart and use it the way we desire. And I love
Yeah.
that you and I, before we hopped on the call, were talking about almost the like overwhelm of astrocartography, and you can dive into relocation charts, and so many people don't realize that they have so much power just at the tips of their fingers. You can literally choose what energy you want to experience and
Yes.
play with your chart and play with the world and the energies of your unique natal chart superimposed on the globe, and then create the reality you desire. And it was almost like,
Yes.
I need to pause, I need to step back. Like, is this,
Yeah.
it's like very real power.
Yeah,
I love that you're
absolutely.
playing with that, and I can't wait. I have a feeling our paths will continue to weave together, and we'll be chatting about this again. But I'm
Yes.
really curious about if you can share with people about the masculine energy that has supported you to show up in a day-to-day, consistent, loving way that has ultimately been a devotional practice to keeping your channel clear. How has
Mm,
how does that story weave into your life? And are there pieces of wisdom you can share with listeners?
absolutely. First, I want to say I love you for asking me this question. I feel like if there's one question that I could be asked, I would want it to be this one. I love that. Thank you. So yeah, I actually want to start off with when we look at things from when we look at animals, I I noticed that with certain animals like cheetahs or elephants or lions, we notice that the female actually chooses to step away from the male when she's impregnated to raise the baby off of instinct and intuition. Before I realized this, a few months before, I had asked myself and the universe or the higher intelligence to bring me closer to animals, just because I could sense a bit of disconnection with me and animals, and I didn't really understand why. Of course, when we don't ask things very specifically, again, they come kind of camouflaged. For me, I started to develop a connection where I was seeing people's spirit animals and starting to understand and study different instincts and patterns that animals would have. And this one was very illuminating to me because I favor those animals very much, lions, elephants, and cheetahs. So I think this really had me reflect about masculine energy in the feminine for sure. And when I had wrote the Believe It to See It book, I really emphasized this in a chapter all about masculinity for feminine. And I believe that studying Shiva Shakti in non-dual tantra and yoga, I realized that although it is often that women feel that there are times that we are let down by our father figures or a partner or a friend, and we feel weakened or we feel left or we feel unmet. It is then that, in my personal experience, I have had to build from that place to create something sustainable and secure for myself. And it was from those disempowerments that I was actually able to carve out the most beautiful things in my life. So I would say in those darkest times in my life, I was able to find my light. Now, when we step back and we're looking at it beyond a male and a female, we can look at life as masculine and feminine energy. Like a cup is the masculine and the water is the feminine. We need a container to pour our creativity into. And in yoga, they talk about the masculine had a dream and the feminine birthed it, right? And so I really do believe that it's important for us to create our own structure so that our dreams, our desires, and our ambitions can be embedded into our life correctly. And I think that the feminine parts of us, which we all have them, the left and the right side of the body, the brain, all of the different things, the way we dream and the way we see ourselves, and our future or even our past, it needs structure and it needs discernment and it needs security to be able to actually be integrated and comprehensible for us to look back on our lives and also move forward. And when we look at, neurologically, or when we're trying to rewire our reality or our brain, it matters the way that we remember our past. And if we're constantly coming from a place of, I don't want to use the word victimhood because it's harsh, but if we are constantly coming from a place of disempowerment based on the things that have happened to us, which have all that everyone has faced lack of security or lack of stability or being let down or hasn't been met in a way they wished. And when we look back in those places, we see where they created trajectories for us. And I think it's extremely important for a female, especially as the world continues to repeat history and everything continues to compound. And it's always these same lessons, and they just get deeper and deeper for us, for humanity, and for Earth, that it's important that we continue to embed the wisdom of a woman and her own discernment and her own inner masculinity. Because if we can't create our own inner masculinity, the masculinity that is created in our reality will never be able to meet us. So I think that it's super important for a woman to create a routine. Now, this is where it could come off cliche, but a routine and things that help her feel secure, even the smallest things create huge ripples. And I just think, yeah, like just like a cup, you want to drink tea and you want to create a special potion for your morning or for your day to set your intentions. You need that mug, you need that cup to pour into for you to be able to drink that. And it's just that same way with life. So I have a lot to say about that. Um, yeah, it's a very beautiful concept, and it's wonderful when we can begin to see the world in masculine and feminine and understand that we require both for the dance of union and the beauty. And this is not to put either or energy underneath. They're as equal. They just have different gifts. They serve different purposes. And it's important that we find the balance of both in our own bodies so that it is replicated in our reality correctly so that we can thrive.
I think this conversation could go so many directions, and it's not like in no way is this all encompassing in the few moments that we have together. But I
Mhm.
think that it's so important for people to understand that our external reality is actually a reflection of our internal reality. And what I'm hearing from you, to paraphrase, is essentially if you have zero relationship to your inner masculine, you won't have much of a relationship to the outer. And I'm peeking at your chart here, Lacie. It's so freaking beautiful to hear your evolution with this piece of the conversation because you have Saturn in Cancer in your fifth house. So, Saturn oftentimes in astrology can represent the masculine parenting energy, whether that is your father or your mother. It's just this masculine energy that grew you essentially. And yours speaks to almost like a restriction around fun, around creativity, around play, around really letting you be a child. And it
Mm,
might have been like an energy that propelled you in a direction that was not your own choosing.
mm,
Or, you know, like I'm thinking of a parent that really wants their child to be good at a sport. So they put
mm,
the, you know, it was like the parents' desires overrode your desires, or they just didn't give you the spaciousness to be who you came here to be,
mm.
if that's resonating. So there's some sort of like restriction around the magic of life, around, you know, really just being able to
Yeah.
exist. And then also in the sign of Cancer, it might have felt like your childhood, like the word dry is actually coming to mind
Mm,
because Cancer is that, or sorry, Saturn is that like constricting, restricting energy, and Cancer is nourishment. So it
hmm.
might have been
Yeah.
some sort of, is this resonating?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. So I do have to look beyond some of the verbiage, but it absolutely does resonate with energetics and things that I was experiencing at a young age. And I will say too, I love both of my parents deeply and their experience here. It's their first time. And as I continue to grow, I'm so proud of each of them and their evolution and our shared evolution together. So I just wanted to emphasize that. But what I will say is that a lot of people have asked me, what are your parents like? Or are your parents very spiritual? What is your mom like? Or what is your dad like? And what I'll say is they're actually the most spiritual people I've ever met, but they don't know. And I think that that is why I am who I am because I want people to see their gifts. And I think my long for connection is to help others see the things that I see in them because it felt maybe a bit difficult for me to emphasize the beauty that I saw in them based on our human experience and the things that separate us, the illusions, the veils of separation, conflict, timing, all those different things that disconnect us as humans that are truly just illusions. But I think in my adolescence, before I had the um, ability to articulate or understand, comprehend, or digest what it is that I was experiencing. That was what was being digested subconsciously, was that long to help others understand what it is that I see despite our circumstances. So I do believe that they are the reason that the trajectory of me feeling passionately about others seeing themselves clearly, they are the catalyst behind that for sure. And that is why they are some of the most spiritual people that I know. So I definitely agree with that. And I think that because of those veils that we experience, time, separation, um, ignorance is just a lack of knowledge based on our human minds, like what we can comprehend. It creates dryness when we can't celebrate the mundane. So I do believe that that is what was happening. And I do believe that the intelligence that we have at 15, 20, 30, 40, or 50 is in us as, a newborn, but it is just harder to articulate or integrate into our world. So it is something that has always been in my chart, right? In my astrology or in human design or in my innate truth. And so it's always being subconsciously this big pattern of the same things, learning them in different ways. So for sure.
That is so beautiful. I felt quite tender listening to your description of that. Like I almost wanted to cry. That's so, so beautiful. And for you to be like I have Chiron, the wounded healer, in the sign of Cancer.
Mm,
So it's almost like this warped lens through which I see family and mother. And
mm.
that's going to be a lifelong journey. And it has been a lifelong journey thus far. So just to hear your simultaneous objectivity and understanding from an expanded perspective of the purpose of your parents and like why they are the way that they are, and to see that in relation to your mission and
Yeah,
in relation to this like deep love and honoring of them too is so, so beautiful.
yeah.
Does anything come up right away? Just this next piece that wants to come from you?
Yeah, I'll say absolutely. I always am studying patterns and trying to apply them with what I know at the time. It always continues. I think that that is another piece of the reason that this interconnectedness, the studies of the web of everything is something that I feel very connected to. And as I continue to get older or read different things or get different certifications, again, like I said, everything remains true at an underlying level, and the connection from our bodies to our brains, the organs to our emotions. I continue to see this big, big network of love and truth in everything. And one of the things that I learned in, excuse me, yoga school was the Dalai Lama, learning a little bit about Dalai Lama and his emphasis on to warn 3 times before you ever do harm. So the act of compassion and nonviolence. And I remember my teacher actually actually told me because I was like, about a bug when we were in Bali. And he was like, always warn a bug 3 times before you shoot it or you kick it or you kill it. You have to warn them 3 times, tap the table. And I was like, what? And then I stepped away from my yoga school and was trying to integrate yoga into my life in every way. And I continued to hear him say that to me. Um, and that those are kind of the experiences that I have, those audible experiences where I hear back the same sentence from the same person and it illuminates something in them, me, and then it also illuminates a higher truth. And it kind of made me really lean into the Sri Yantra, I think is how I pronounce it, the sacred geometry of the triangles. And I started to study that sacred geometry at a very young age from going to festivals and raves and all that fun stuff. And I have some of them in my room actually through the windows. But triangles really I started to get very drawn to triangles because of elements. And, the triangles that represent the different elements face different directions. And also same with masculine and feminine energy. Yes, I noticed that right away when we hopped on. The triangle facing up representing masculinity and the triangle facing down representing femininity. And that tap 3 times to show compassion before you ever do harm just kept resonating with me as I would look at this Sri Yantra piece of sacred geometry and all the different triangles and all the different elements. Again, everything coming together in this interconnected way. And I started to realize that everything that we do, or the chances, or the relationships, or the lessons that we face, they knock 3 times. And in this way, it's very interesting because they knock one for me, one for you. Maybe in this conversation, if we were to use an example, is that you're illuminating things for me, and ultimately, I'm illuminating things for you, and the person listening as well. But we also illuminate something higher than both of us, a higher intelligence that continues to be rippled through humanity, and over time, a higher intelligence that we're all seeking, which is the truth. And I feel that that is the third knock, whether it's through Dalai Lama or a triangle or whatever, it is a universal truth that I feel we have our experience, they have theirs, and then there's a higher reasoning behind it. And if we see the world this way, things actually do become very compassionate.
Mhm.
So I don't know if it was that message from Dalai Lama to me through my yoga teacher, or what it was, but there was a truth somewhere in there, and I'm still trying to understand it or articulate it. But there's beauty even in the simplest things like shapes and lessons, and it's take everything gently and take everything with a grain of salt, but understand that everything is happening for you. Um, and all of those quotes that we see, sometimes we see them once, then we see them twice, or we see them once, they don't resonate with us. Maybe we share them for somebody else because we think it would resonate with them, and it comes back to us in a higher truth. So I continue to just see this knocking 3 times, tapping 3 times, this lesson, maybe experiences, or even relationship circumstances when you seek something, they seek something, and then we realize what the bigger picture is. It's a beautiful way to look at things if you're seeking hope or hoping that things return or trying to understand things from a non detached but also connected. Just seeing your life that way. So I think shapes, elements, emotions, teachings, all of it. We're really just so eternally blessed in every area. Like you can't run out of blessings. So,
Yeah, your share around this is reminding me and also I want to invite listeners to almost approach their challenges and hardships with this curiosity of what is the expanded meaning behind this.
mm,
As you were sharing this knock 3 times, there's also a Buddhist philosophy that says when you've approached something 3 times, you've really done your due diligence. And an example of that is a like dear friend of mine who I'd loved for a very long time. The dissolution of our friendship happened essentially around New Year's. And I know there's this objective higher part of me that understands we have an agreement and that ultimately this dissolution was empowering for me. And there's so much more to this, but there's this higher understanding of the agreement. And there's an honoring of my human because there's
Yes.
feelings around this, right? So there's
Hmm.
this like this there's this honoring of this human part of me that has gone through the waves and is still sometimes in the waves. And then there's this higher objectivity that understands the why and the contrast
Yes.
between us both, this higher truth of, I can really sit back and when I think of her now, I can thank her and send her
Yes.
love and just I kind of imagine us on the other side, two souls saying like I'll do this for you and I'll do this for you and us like
Absolutely.
on physical
Yeah.
hands and like the agreement. So yeah, I think that there really is always purpose behind pain. And
Yeah.
coming back to this piece of Saturn in this lower part of your chart, in like this is a piece of wisdom you've likely had from such a young age, that our pain actually has purpose and that we are quite capable of alchemy because we can turn that into something so rich,
Yes.
transforming into purpose and then wisdom that you share with the world. You're doing it
Absolutely.
into love. So it's beautiful to see this process playing out for you. And yeah, I think you're really on an incredible journey.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and thank you for that vulnerable share about your experience with the triangle or that way of looking at things. And it's funny when you actually said that back about my chart. It continues when we vocalize things, we can continue to make connections in beautiful ways. And when I was younger, I had started writing a book called So You're an Old Soul, huh? Like with a question mark, because a lot of people would tell me that. And one of the first things I wrote about was the third essence. It was like a chapter in the book, and it was actually so that you could see things from the third perspective in conflict, because a lot of relationships, like I said, were placed there for me, for my own evolution, or the veils of our disconnected perception of what's happening. And I would always say to my loved ones or to my early on partners or my best friends, like, if me and you created an energy and they were a person, what would they be like? What would they act like? Like, what is their energy? That is a representation of like what we're creating. And what do you think that they would have to say about what it is we're experiencing right now? And like that was always, I always tried to move from that person, from that mind, from that place of giving both the opportunity to both people to be able to, have their say or their energy or their experience embedded into what it is that we choose. And in yoga, we look at the mind, the three-part mind in the eightfold city of the brain. And there's like the thinking mind and the ego mind. And then there's the Buddhi mind, the overseer. So, yeah, I think there's some deep truth somewhere inside, that three knock, that triangle, or any way you want to look at the number three, there's powers in threes. Like, there really is. So, yeah.
I'm excited for this. It feels like you're in the adventure of this triangle
Yes.
conversation. And not that the conversation will ever be over. There is no destination, but I'm so excited to touch base with you down the road and hear about the evolution of this meaning and this philosophy of the triangle for you. I really feel like there's something,
Yeah.
and it's going to be developed and really cool to chat with you about down the road.
Yes.
I just want to say thank you so, so much for your time today. I think that there are so many avenues we could have taken this interview, and I trust that there will likely be a time down the road where we are expanding on some of this. And just for listeners, I invite you always to listen through the lens of your own intuition. And if there are pieces of, a thread of curiosity, follow it, follow your delight, follow your curiosity. If there's something that made absolutely zero sense to you, that's okay too. You might listen to this again down the road and hear something vastly different. And it's just such a beautiful conversation to be having with you, Lacie. Are there any questions that you have for me about your chart that I could expand?
Mm.
And just to add to that, they don't necessarily need to be an astrology question. Sometimes it could literally be a question about life, and then we get to dive into what your chart has to say about it.
Thank you for the opportunity. Yes. Right now, I've actually created a compass based on psychosynthesis and universal law, and I apply it to myself and to my clients. And I really think that there's a key in every node of the compass in the ways that we use universal law, but I also feel so deeply connected to the law of polarity, kind of like you were saying, a little bit of alchemy work there. And I do believe that for our listeners, to always lean into the polarity of their experiences because there are gifts there. And like you said, our pain is really there for us. Everything is reflecting our own magnetism and our own edge. And what feels uncomfortable really is a gateway to something that we don't know is within us. And I continue to experience this every year at this time of Leo Virgo. I
Mm.
continue to be illuminated with the knowledge of coming to my edge in a way that is very confronting, and it always works with the same figures in my life. And I continue to realize that when we see patterns in our lives, when we're seeking correspondence or manifesting something, our threshold has to be expanded for us to be able to hold it. And I really love working with the law of polarity. So I continue to see these same waves for myself every Leo season. And then when we come into that Virgo season, which I'm a Virgo, it's like everything gets very clear to me. But for I'm seeing this pattern now that is like, wow, why is this happening every year with essentially the same individuals that mean more than a million to me? And why am I being confronted this way, and why are these things triggering me, and why do I feel such a pull to apply all my energy and all my leadership and all my abilities and knowledge into these situations? I don't know. It gets wide. So maybe something for Leo Virgo, maybe something about polarity, alchemy.
Okay. So, what comes up immediately as you're sharing this, even without sharing too many details, is when we are pre-Saturn return. So, Saturn takes about 28 years to travel all the way around your unique chart. And
Mm,
every 7 years, there's almost like a challenge because he's going to be creating a 90 degree in your chart. And a 90 degree just, it means it's square, it means there's some sort of lesson. So you would have had some sort of lesson around 17. Give, like, with a grain of salt, understand that it's not always 28 on the mark because Saturn does go retrograde and whatnot. But it's like, okay, every child at the age of 7 has some sort of challenge. Like it's
mm.
every child at the age of 14 has some sort of challenge. Like we're in puberty, we're in, it's a tricky time of life. And then 21 is sometimes our like significant challenge.
Ah.
Yeah, you're let's see, one, two, three. You're kind of past that, but you might still feel like you're coming out of it a little bit.
For
But
sure.
there there's almost like Saturn for the first 28 years is really supporting you to work through your karma. And you can look at karma, and this is more for listeners than you, because I think that you have a beautiful understanding and relationship to karma. But just so that we're all on the same page here, karma can literally be pieces of other lives, other experiences, whether those lives are parallel, past, future, time doesn't really exist. So Either way, we are given the opportunity in our young life to almost amplify the karma
Mm,
so that it
mm,
becomes obvious to us. And you can
mm.
also look through the lens of epigenetics. When we experience trauma in our physical vessel, it changes our genetic expression, and we then pass that genetic expression on to our children, and so on and so on and so on. So you are quite literally an ancestor in the making, changing the trajectory of your entire fucking lineage with the work that you're doing. And the key
Mm,
is through the vessel because we are humans. We have chosen as these souls, as these higher beings of love and unity consciousness to experience separation. We've
ah.
chosen to experience it all. I had an astrology teacher, Deborah Silverman, who used to say the soul was a slut. And I would be like, what? Those two words do not belong together. They just like it kind of like made me like shy away a little bit. But I understand what she means because the soul doesn't differentiate between good, bad, ugly, blah, blah, blah. The soul just wants to experience it all. So here you are to experience this amplified karma in your first 28 years of your life so that it's obvious and you're working through it. And then after that Saturn return, it's almost like you get to control the pen that writes your
Mm.
story all by yourself, and the hand of karma is no longer touching the pen.
Ah,
So
that's
on that
beautiful. Thank
note,
you.
you are someone with this like enormous amount of wisdom and connection to purpose and understanding of these universal laws and higher knowings. And you're not even to your first Saturn return. And there's this level of sovereignty that already lives in you and this understanding of sovereignty. And you're working through karma still. And I do believe that like we're probably working through it our whole lives, but like there's a chunk of it
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
almost like front loaded,
Yeah.
in our young life. So is this resonating?
Yes, 100%. Thank you so much. And absolutely, I really feel like when we step back and we allow all things to compound, like I said, those truths come through and the patterns come through even more. That's the beauty in reprogramming the subconscious mind and also reprogramming the way you perceive what it is you're experiencing, and seeing it from a different perspective. Like when we look at the moon and we allow time not to exist and we follow our cycles and we calculate our emotions, and then we start to step back and we look at the whole year and we see that the emotions are falling in the same way at the same time every so often depending on the moon, and then we step back even far and split the year into the four seasons and even farther, and then we start to see the years compound. We would actually begin to see such resonance at the same time, and then we begin to compound on the seasons of the zodiacs or our zodiac, and then on top of that the planet, and then on top of that we have our elements and our emotions and our psychic abilities in the same stories being taught to us in camouflaged ways until we break those cycles. And what's really interesting is even when we are aware, it takes time and repetition for the cycle to really show us the invisible teaching. And I think, like you're saying, it comes through front loaded. And it's important for all of us to be able to see that because the same things will be taught to us in such different ways. And until we can come out of ourselves and out of our ignorance, we can't see that. And I'm trying deeply to come out of it. And actually, fortunately and unfortunately for me, mine show up with the same people and in the same ways because I keep my circle close knit. And I also keep myself very particular so that if any differences happen, I can clearly see them. So it definitely does resonate. And I'm still feeling so mysterious around why. And I continue to lead with the heart and know that it's a lesson. It's not these individuals, it's not these circumstances. And that's a beautiful way for any listener or each other to look at the things that happen to us because love really is the highest truth. And every act of a human that we can give is somewhere a call out for love underneath. So I think it's a beautiful way to let go and actually transmute your karma is to remember that. So thank you for sharing that.
Oh, you're so, so welcome. I really feel called to ask the question of like, what if this situation is inviting you further into your human than you've ever been because you've nailed this higher perspective of love and that this is
Yeah.
happening for me? And sometimes it can be way too easy to leave behind the human in these situations. Like, what would it feel like to actually be a little immature here? Even if it's only in the
I
realm, like go for a walk and like call that person in energetically and tell them they're being a dipshit. It's like
hmm
give ourselves permission to let our human take up space. And it's like these emotions aren't going anywhere. They're actually here to tell us we're worthy of taking up space too. And we actually
Yeah.
don't always have to come from a loving perspective when it comes to boundary. And sometimes it's
Yeah.
like the kindest thing that I can actually do for this other human's evolution is to tell them to fuck off.
Yeah, yeah.
Feels
And
so
I,
simple, but it's
yes. And you know what? Here's the lesson. Like, here, I really do think like this is the third year that this has happened. And I'm like, okay, like we're at that final knock. And it's like, that is what I'm seeing too. Like, that is what I'm seeing too. So, literally, anyone that is listening, I think it's like the beauty and the truth behind Katie's work as well. Like, I hope she listens to this, inviting us into that space, me, you, energetics, human, soul, and like stepping away from that space. It was one of the most sacred experiences I've had looking at the human. And that's different for me. Absolutely. So I have chills everywhere. You saying that definitely brings that to surface. I continue to see that, you know what, it is kind of just like fuck off in a way, and like
Mhm.
I can own that and it doesn't change my character because underneath there's an essence that remains true. And like you said, it is the best thing that I can do. And that's what I've told every single person in my life, that sovereignty isn't about being a leader that kneels down next to everybody to tell them exactly how to do it. It's somebody that leads by example and doesn't look back to see if people are watching. And
Mhm.
I think that it's a tough route because it can feel lonely, but at the end of the day, you have so many people walking with you. And when you stop looking back, the crowd gets bigger. It really does. And eventually, when that karma is transmuted, it really is just one big party. So, so I'm waiting. That final knock is happening, and there are some routes that I'm taking that feel different and feel edgy. But it's like studying that law of polarity and studying my own compass and like seeing what's illuminated. It's so beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me into this conversation. And I'm so happy we met at that retreat. And to Katie, if she's listening or anybody listening, she's an incredible being too. Her work is seen and it's spread and it's still rippling into my life now for sure. So,
I
yeah.
absolutely. It's been such a pleasure getting to know you, and I'm so excited for your journey. Don't forget your human girlfriend because she deserves to take up space too. And where can people find you?
Yeah, so Soul Led Career on Instagram. It's just one L, so soul and led, they just share one L. Soul Led Career, and you can always reach out to me through the DMs. I have soulledcareer.com setting up my website and everything, but I would love to chat with anyone that wants to talk about their cycles or their subconscious patterns or really anything because underneath it all, it's the same truth. So I'm here in service, 100% to just connect and be a pillar in any way that I can. So reach out, reach out, reach out. And I'd love to work with entrepreneurs or anybody that's looking to work with their brand. It's called Soul Led Career for a reason. So if that sparks anything in you, I'd love to chat.
Oh, you are so incredible. Thank you for your time today and just for being who you are and sharing yourself with the world. It is such a pleasure, and I can't wait till we do this again.
You too. Thank you.